Welcome to Music Crush, a new music podcast hosted by Flute New Music Consortium. I'm Elizabeth Robinson.
And I'm Nicole Reiner. You've got some stuff coming up, don't you? Do you have some new music performances you're excited about?
Do I have
Got
some
a faculty recital.
mostly my faculty recital? New campus, new collaborators. So I'm gonna play a duo for flute and clarinet by Shulamit Ran, unclear on pronunciation, but it's Ode to the Brave Chicken. Sorry, let me get this title correct. It's Flight of the Brave Chicken, Ode to Nina.
Who's Nina?
So Nina was an illustrator. The cover that I'm showing Nicole on the visual camera that unfortunately none of you can see,
Adorable.
are these four little illustrations of a chicken. And this was, I'm told by the publisher, the art that Nina was most known for in her life. Nina had a battle with cancer, which she lost, and her family members went to temple with Shulamit Ran, so they had this piece commissioned in her honor, and it tells the story of the little illustrated chicken and its interactions with a troll, which are portrayed by the bass clarinet, and so there are little vignettes in the piece that tell the story of these two illustrative characters. So they're kind of honoring the titular Nina's work in life. I'm just getting started digging into the piece. I just have an enthusiasm for chickens and was like, oh, a piece about chickens, I'm gonna do it. But as I was buying the score, the gentleman from Theodore Presser was telling me the backstory, and I was like, that's a really nice story. So I'm gonna file that away and learn more about that when I learn the piece.
Cool.
And then I guess Jennifer Higdon's Bentley Rose
cycle.
Gonna do the version for mezzo, flute, and piano.
Nice.
So those two pieces, and then the FNMC commission from, was it 2020?
Is that the Zeman?
Cherise? No,
right. It was supposed to be for 2022.
Okay.
Because it was supposed to be for the festival. I think she turned it in 2021, but
okay. So it was 2021 was when it was supposed to premiere.
It was supposed to premiere in February of 2022 at the festival that we had to cancel.
This is still 2022. For some reason, I'm feeling like that festival was many years ago.
I know.
Okay. So
it's been a very long year.
Now that I'm back in the correct calendar, we're gonna we are gonna premiere, or not premiere, we are gonna perform a piece for solo flute. And by we, I also mean me. I don't know what year it is. I don't know what planet it is. I'm going to play Cherise Leiter's A Voice Silenced, A Voice Sings.
That's right. Good. That's
which
great.
Juxtaposes Billie Holiday and Hildegard of Bingen, which the piece is delightful, but even if it weren't, the fact that it's Hildegard of Bingen and Billie Holiday in the same piece is a juxtaposition that I feel like I needed in my life and I just didn't know. So
all it's missing is a chicken.
Well, I had that. We brought chickens from the clarinet duo, so
right. Covered.
Like the undercurrent here is I like chickens, I like feminism, and I like Jennifer Higdon. So chickens and feminism is the unspoken theme of the recital.
Sounds like you've got your poster all figured out.
Chickens and feminism, a faculty flute recital.
I would like a bulleted list. I like chickens, I like feminism, and I like Jennifer Higdon.
Well, the unofficial, I like Jennifer Higdon. I've always liked her music, but it went from like enjoying Jennifer Higdon to idolizing her in a way that is perhaps not totally appropriate. The Midwest conference in 2018, they had a panel on women in band music. And Jennifer Higdon and Libby Larson were on that panel. And there was this horrible heckler in the audience
Ugh.
at the end, and he took the microphone to ask his question, which was more of a comment, really. And it turned into this extended monologue about how programming music by women, because it was music by women, really just took opportunities away from men. And so wasn't that just perpetuating the problem, but in the reverse direction? And I swear it took a year for them to get the microphone away from that man. Libby Larsen said something very articulate and very beautiful about why programming music by women was the right thing. And Jennifer Higdon removed the microphone from Libby Larsen's hand and said, also, besides which, you're wrong. And in my imagination, she dropped the mic and everyone screamed. But I have strong associations of feminist ideals and Jennifer Higdon. So when I say I like chickens and I like feminism,
Jennifer Higdon's in there.
Jennifer Higdon's in there, but we'll list her separately in case the ideals I'm projecting onto her do not necessarily reflect ideals she might articulate herself. So, recital title, Feminism and Chickens.
Feminine chickens? Feminist?
I don't know if they're feminine chickens. I haven't.
You get to decide, I suppose.
Well, I have to probably do a little bit of research about Nina's illustration because I don't know. Is the chicken? I guess it's a chicken and not a rooster.
Right. Yeah.
Feminine chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Although I guess that's just redundant, isn't it? I didn't think about that.
Do chickens have strong feelings about gender associations?
I mean, if they're all ladies, they're all ladies if they're not roosters. So it's sort of like saying woman.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess in my mind, but it's the name of the species and also the name of the gender. And I think that's where I got thrown off. At any rate, all of these illustrations are delightfully cartoonish, so there do not seem to be any characterizations one way or another. And it's not a troll, it's an ogre. I misspoke. Brave chicken meets the ogre.
I think that's really fitting for a clarinetist.
Ogre. Yeah. As a side note, the clarinetist I'm going to be playing with, apparently his clarinet quartet submitted to the Music by Women Festival also. So he's going to be in Mississippi and you're going to get to meet him.
Oh, party.
He's a hoot.
It's too bad. Did you submit this Shulamit Ron?
No, we haven't played it yet, and you had to submit a recording of the piece.
Right.
So if we get a decent recording out of it, we'll submit it next year.
Maybe you should just like take the stage, just like crash the stage and play it.
I'm gonna force some chickens on you.
Who doesn't want some chickens? Some feminine chickens.
Well, chickens of any gender identifying category are exciting for me.
But at this festival, it has to be women.
That's true. That's true. Well, I'm thinking of 3 pieces that include flute and chickens. And they all happen to be by female composers. So we've got,
and at least one was commissioned by you.
Well, yeah, we've got Foul Play by Kim Osberg, which is the quartet about chickens. We've got the Shulamit Ron duo, and the FNMC piece from a few years ago by Nina Shaker is not about chickens, but the first spoken words are, "What do you know about chickens?" And that's zoo songs.
Yeah, I forgot about how excited I was about that piece, and I played it, and then I set it aside. It was hard for me. I mean, like it was a lot of work. So maybe I set it aside because it was like, oh, okay, I don't want to dust off that much energy right now. The singing was a lot of work for me.
Oh yeah.
But it was such a great piece. I should get it back out and play it more. Zoo songs, right? Yeah,
zoo songs. I feel like it would come back relatively easily. I don't know. There's a lot of singing in that one, and there's a lot of singing in Cherise Leiter's piece.
Yes.
And I am not designed for pitch accurate singing. So both of those are stretch pieces for me in that way. But I feel very passionately about their subject matter. So sometimes people got to listen to my bad singing. I like this piece that asks about chickens at the start. But yeah.
Yeah, that is a great piece. And I remember, I can't remember who she wrote it for, but I remember that person was playing it a lot at the time. But I wonder, but then the pandemic, you know, a couple years later. So I wonder if Zoo Songs is getting much airplay these days.
It got picked up a couple of times right at the start of the pandemic. I think I saw it on a guest artist recital for Atlanta Flute Fair. I think Amy Porter
Nice.
was playing Zoo Songs at Atlanta
Wow,
Flute Fair.
that's great.
Well, like Small World, Amy
Oh,
Porter was Nina's flute teacher when Nina was at Michigan. So they
right. That's right.
maybe knew about, I don't know. But I thought I saw Zoo Song show up on a couple of programs right before the pandemic. So it was starting to take off, which I was excited about because the piece is fun and the composer seemed lovely.
It is. It is a really cool piece.
Yep.
Yeah, I performed it for like hundreds of high school students. I mean, I ended up doing it for our Wyoming Flute Day at University of Wyoming that year. And I mean, there was a lot of laughter at
Yep.
appropriate times, but also just a lot of like jaws dropped. Like you know, it was just so unheard of for them to experience singing, singing and then playing. You know, successive singing and playing, and the subject matter is fun. Yeah,
It's a very
that's a good
lighthearted
one.
piece. I think I also played it at an event for prospective music students and also received a lot of laughter. But um, the university students who by that time knew me and my taste in music were still asking about the chicken piece years later. So
Good.
that
That's a
might have
good
been
sign.
the chicken instigator. That actually might be why I got into chickens to commission foul play later.
Interesting. And Foul Play, which is a you know mixed flute quartet that we're playing at the Music by Women Festival in March, is so. I when you first mentioned it to me and I hadn't seen the music yet, I was expecting something very kind of cutesy and whimsical. But I think if you didn't know it was about chickens, it would just be a really interesting, serious piece. Not to
Yeah,
say that whimsical is bad, but there's like Firebird, there's Stravinsky moments in there. It's a really nice piece.
it's a nice piece. I think again, animal issues, but I think knowing
Jeez.
the knowing the photographs and the types of chickens that inspired it, I think adds a layer to it. But I do think it stands well on its own,
Yeah.
which is the thing that Kim does well, I think.
Hmm. Is she going to be at the festival?
I haven't asked her. I don't know.
Does she live in Indiana or
She lives
she went there?
in Oregon.
Oh, that would be a very expensive trip
I
then.
think she's moved since I became aware of her existence.
Hmm. Well, I
I
wouldn't
don't
go.
know.
I wouldn't go if I lived in Oregon. That's quite a hike.
Yeah, I don't know. But we'll get her a recording of a performance, and she has the commercial recording. So
Yeah. When you commission pieces, you know, you can give a certain amount of direction, but you want to let the composer do what the composer wants to do. And then sometimes the piece ends up being fine, but you're not, you know, squealing with delight, right? Has that ever
right,
happened to you? But
never.
but but Kim's piece, for instance, like, do you feel like you really knocked it out of the park with that one, or what are some of your favorite pieces that you've commissioned that really turned out
It's interesting
had
because
everything
I
that
think
you wanted?
even the pieces that I've commissioned that I didn't initially love, as I get to know them better, I learn more. Like getting to know a date or a prospective partner, like you meet them and you're like, yeah, whatever, you seem fine. I don't know if I want to marry you, but like I can sit across from you and eat spaghetti for an hour. And
That's a
I
dangerous first date, spaghetti.
what
Hopefully you wear black. You gotta wear black
at any
at
rate,
least.
I there have been multiple, and maybe I'm a tough sell on both dates with spaghetti and commissions, but I feel generally I receive a piece that I've commissioned and I'm like, yeah, there's some cool stuff here. This could maybe be okay, but like I don't have strong feelings one way or another. And it's usually as I get to know the piece a little bit better that I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. Like, this is really good. Or, I'll think I like it, and then you hear the composer talk about it later, and you're like, there are so many layers. I was not even aware of all the layers, and I like that it's complex and nuanced, and you get to know it more like a spouse and less like a spaghetti date. I don't know.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true of any piece of music. I mean, if it's intriguing enough to learn to begin with, probably learn more and more things to appreciate as you work on it.
Yeah, but I guess in answer to your question, I of the pieces I've commissioned personally, I don't think I've disliked any of them. There have been some that have been a slower burn than others, but the thing that has been really cool for me is like after they stop being my piece and they become a piece which belongs to the world, and so you hear the composer talking about that work with other performers or to an audience of prospective performers that do not include me, that's when they start to say the stuff where I'm like, dang, composer friend, you have really put, the work it took to write the piece, but also there's all this other stuff and all of these really nuanced layers. And I feel like that makes it into something different just because there's more texture and more layer in it than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm kind of excited for other people to get a hold of foul play, because I feel like I know what I like about it and I know how I feel about it now. But then you'll hear Kim talking about chicken inspirations with other flutists and think, I had no idea that was in there. That's even cooler.
Yeah, what's the deal? Do you have exclusive rights up to Bleh? Is it out and available to the public now, that quartet?
She's holding it until we've had a live performance. So like
Oh yeah.
she gave a composition talk a couple of weeks ago and apparently like showed photos from the book that we were both using as a reference point for the chickens. But she won't start selling the score until we've performed it live, kind of as a favor, because it, came out during all that mess where live performances weren't necessarily happening. So,
Right, I forgot. Yeah, we spent so much time recording it. I sort of forgot that
yeah, no one's ever heard
that feels
it.
like, the equivalent of at least 15 performances. But
Yeah, so the only live audiences that have heard it are the producer and the recording tech that were with us
right.
when we recorded it. So live performance, an actual like real life beginning to end live performance will happen in January and then again in March. And sometime
Nice.
there, I guess she's gonna share the piece with prospective chicken enthusiasts.
Well, I mean, I hope she doesn't limit herself to that selling line, because you could become a chicken enthusiast from working on that piece. I had no idea chickens could look the way they do in that novelty chicken book of
Yeah.
yours. That was
Yeah.
your reference point. So
I think I'm just excited to have a bunch of people develop an enthusiasm for strange breeds of chicken and not know that that was a thing that I inflicted on them.
your gift to the world.
My gift to the world is some crazy feathers. Here you go.
That is so satisfying, to commission a piece that ends up doing well. That's what you really hope for, is that it enriches other people's lives too, and other people get excited and say, oh, I need to add this to my repertoire.
Well, that's the goal. We'll see how much it happens with some of these pieces, but I don't know. I think when folks get to know the Cherise Leiter piece, it should speak to probably a different crowd than the chickens. Hopefully that'll take off. I don't know. Have you spent much time with it yet?
No, I haven't. I mean, I think that the majority of the time I spent on it was just going through it when she first sent it in as a draft, when we were all looking for any questions we had or whatever before we finalized it and took the final PDF. Yeah, the singing looks challenging. There's just a lot of it. It seems like a really cool idea. Well, a lot of extended techniques too. Yeah, there's a lot of whenever I learn a piece that has a lot of different tasks, singing, playing normally, extended techniques, it always feels like one of those like pat your head and rub your tummy kind of like just having to coordinate, having my brain remember like now you will do a tongue ram and now you have to play this note, is sometimes the hardest thing to get started, and then it comes together fine with all the repetition. But I learned Zach Latino's Fitting In over the summer and played it in the fall. And some of the things that were hardest for me were just my brain moving on to the next thing, or just like that coordination. So the whole first page of the piece is just key click tongue ram over and over again with occasional like spit out a harmonic and then go back to key click tongue ram. And I was like, all right, well, there's a page and a half of that. I'm not going to learn that first. I'm going to go to the later pages that have lots of hard notes in them and lots of, very rhythmical foot stomps and things like that. And those were hard pages. But when I got to the first page, it was just key click tongue ram over and over again, just eighth notes at quarter note equals 152. For the life of me, I could not do that quickly. It was totally just a brain thing. Like I would just sit there at the end of a practice session and just like, pull up Instagram or something and like flip through National Geographic photos or whatever. And just like, turn on the timer for 5 minutes and just make myself do it at whatever speed I could do it at, just to get the coordination between the two things. It felt so like, why is this hard for me to do? But for some reason, I could not do one and then the other back and forth at first. And so it was just like this training exercise of the hoot and then the click. I don't know.
Yeah. It was a different piece for me, but there's a section also on the first page of Carlos Simon's Move It, where some of it is tonal pitches, some of it is tongue ram type percussive sounds, and some of it is key clicks. And they're in a different order, which I don't remember offhand. I want to say the order is very scattered, but like doing them in the appropriate order, you do it at quarter note is 50 or some ridiculous tempo, and you're like, okay, I've got this under control, and you gradually work it up to closer to the written tempo. And then in the heat of performance, always, every time, ramming where I mean to click, or clicking where I mean to ram, or it's always.
And it doesn't even feel like it's a flute playing issue. It's just like just human coordination. It's good. It's good for us though.
I don't
Keeps
know.
the Alzheimer's at bay, I guess.
I want to say something about like artistic license, and as long as you do it with the spirit of the piece, that hopefully it's okay. But I might just be making excuses for like feeble-mindedness. I can't quite get it in the order.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I felt that way too as I was learning the first page. I was like, this should not be hard. I should not have to. and then you wonder, like, I only talked to one other person who had recorded that piece. Carlotta Raponi, I think is her last name, is Italian flutist and that was the recording that Zach had shared. And it's such great playing. It's an edited recording, but it's great playing. And I got all like creepy cyber stalker flute lady and found her on Instagram and like, messaged her, and I was like, I've been listening to this and you sound amazing, but I was sort of shy about asking I was like, this piece is so hard. And she was like, oh, I know it is. Don't worry, you'll get it, and I was kind of shy about like mentioning specific things I was having troubles with in case she was like, what are you, stupid? That's easy, I mean, she would have been very polite, but I sort of like I reached out to her pretty early in the early stages to express my extreme gratefulness for having her recording, which is really, really great recording. And, who doesn't like to be told that this hard thing they did sounds amazing. So I'm happy to share that with her. But I was definitely in the like, just trying to get my hands to line up and clap kind of feeling of coordination on that first page. And I was like, I wonder if she has any tips about how to do this. And I thought, she probably just thinks I'm an idiot if I ask this, And so you wonder, and it's kind of like Nicole Chamberlain and her piccolo that needed to be fixed, and that's why she could do this thing that you couldn't, like when a composer writes something, like the problems I'm having are those universal problems, or are they just special to my brain? Probably a mix. And the next person who learns that piece might find something else that's really hard, but then, that first page with the key click and the tongue ram over and over again is just like, of course I could do this in my sleep. So that's a fun challenge for composers too, I guess. You just can't worry about it. You just make the sounds you want to make. And
yeah, I mean, I guess write the sounds you want to write, and then performers will struggle through it or sail through it, maybe in alternating frequency.
Butcher it however they're going to butcher it. Yeah.
What do you do when you have a passage like that and there's not a recording? This has been the year of the singing flutist for me. I filled in for someone else at a CMS conference, and the piece called for singing flutist, which actually was what gave me the courage to sing in Cherise's piece. So thank you to that composer.
Nice.
But, I got the score. I agreed to do it, and then I got the score and was like, oh God, there's going to be singing in public, and I shouldn't. And I sent a note to the composer and asked some questions, and oh gosh, they were just so excited to be working with new people other than the people they had written the piece for, that she responded just effusively, just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. And at the time I was like, okay, but how do I do that? What are you like? Tell me what you want. And she wanted me to have fun, and I wanted like a very type A grocery list of directions. Yeah. Come to find out later, like she wrote it with the singing was her like ideal thing that she envisioned, but the original performers refused to do it. And so maybe they sang and played I don't remember, but she explained it had been performed 2 or 3 other times, and I hadn't been able to find recordings on the internet of those 2 or 3 other times, but of all of the performances, nobody had actually sung it as written on stage. So there is now a recording of singing, but it's my like sad little voice with its relative pitch. But like, yeah, what do you do when it's hard or it's weird or the composer is too nice and they don't want to tell you what to do because they want to let you make your own choices? Like, what happens?
I mean, I guess the only way you can, I'm curious to know what this composer thought about the other people just rewriting her piece. I guess
they didn't rewrite it. I guess the wording was ambiguous. Like,
okay.
I don't know. In retrospect, after she said that, I went back and looked at the score and was like, oh, I didn't have to sing, did I?
Oh, but really?
Maybe.
So did she like your version? I mean, did she, or did she
was excited somebody tried it the way she'd originally envisioned it.
Oh, okay.
But I guess whatever it was, I wish I could remember her name or the name of the piece or any of the relevant details here. But she had written some instructions which were ambiguous enough that I interpreted them one way, and some other folks had interpreted them another way. And in speaking to her after the fact, like both of those ways were correct. So it wasn't a rewrite situation. It was like, I would love it if you would sing this, but if you don't, you can sing and play this, or you can just play the pitches that are written. It's all good.
Oh, that's nice.
Like a genuinely open interpretation.
Well, I mean, I guess that's probably some indication that you trying hard to do a good job with it was going to be fine. I guess that goes back to the privilege of being able to really communicate with the composer who is living and someone you can reach out to, right. I guess when I have had a composer not want to give me really strict directions and be very allowing, what I do is then try to call their bluff, like just double check. I mean, it's not in a cynical way, but I'll say, okay, well, I would really feel better if I could send you if there's time for this, if we could either Zoom and you could coach me on it, give me a mini lesson, or I could send you a reference recording and then we'll just double check that you're okay with it. And I have found, I guess I've had about 50-50, experiences of composers saying like, yeah, that's great. They still are just general and just like, yeah, do what you're doing. It's fine. Or composers saying, well, actually, now that you're playing this for me, I can specify this is what you're not doing right. And I don't want to I don't want to say that this is a universal truth, but I think the composers who then decide to be more specific tend to be flutists or another woodwind performer.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
maybe, they're being more specific because they perform
Sure.
and or know the instrument really well. But yeah, I mean, it really is a mix, and you can't know. I mean, you got to take people at their word.
I guess so. I don't know. I've worked most closely with Nicole Chamberlain, who is a
Mhm.
flutist and very much knows like the sound that she wants out of the instrument.
Yeah, she's
Um,
specific. She is a specific person.
and she very much means like, I wrote this, I want you to play this. And
Right.
so I maybe some of my expectation comes from that relationship, but then I think too, some of the other pieces that we recorded that were being recorded before they had ever been heard live because the
Hmm.
pandemic is weird. Um, sitting in a sound booth with the album producer, and Mirene's like, this isn't coming off the way that you think it is. We need to like do something. We need to interpret something. And I'm like, no, but this is what's on the page, and trying to
Mm.
be very specific about it.
Hmm.
And then panic calling the composer, like we had to make a choice and it's forever because we were in the booth and money's expensive. Some of them were like, yeah, I'm just glad that you like gave it life. You made a choice. Good for you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
What? You said some of them were like that, but some of them weren't.
Well, I mean, if they weren't, they didn't tell me. I guess I
Oh,
always
okay.
worry like
Okay.
life seems like it should be more 50-50, but at the time I was telling them it was more of an FYI this has happened and less of a like question mark because,
Right. Because it had happened. Yeah.
you're in a recording studio, time is money, but I guess
Right.
that's why you don't record things in the middle of the pandemic. I don't know. I don't have a moral of the story there.
Well, yeah, I mean, plenty of people did though, because what else were you going to do for creative satisfaction? And also, I mean, in this case, you put this album together of pieces. It's such a great act of service as well on your part, because you commissioned these pieces and they were going to get performed and then everything shut down and you were like, screw it, let's do this, let's get it out there in some way. These pieces deserve to live and breathe, which is really great. Yeah, I mean, as a performer and as a, like all those years in the flute studio, all those years in lessons, you're getting super, super hyper specific, like, no, don't do that wrong, and don't do that, and you got to do it this way, right? I mean, like, that's kind of our experience in our performing education anyway, to some extent. But of course, composers, I don't know what it's like to be in composition lessons. I've never done it, but I think about this a lot, because we get to represent ourselves by ourselves. I mean, and what we're representing is
Oh yeah.
what
Yeah.
we sound like, but like if you get up
This.
on stage and take a dump on stage, so to speak. I have a colleague who will say this after one of his students really infuriates him in juries, personally. Well, she just took a big old dump on the stage. If you get up and take a dump on the stage, it's your fault and your fault alone, which can make us crazy, but also it gives us a sense of agency to the nth degree over what we do. But composers, they write a piece and they put it out there and they're
No
stuck with
control.
they lose a fair amount of control, and they can exert a certain amount by trying to communicate. You and I and many of our friends who really want to make sure that we're being responsible and honoring the composer's wishes will reach out to composers and try to have these interactions with them to make sure that everything's copacetic before a performance. But plenty of people don't. It doesn't even occur to them, right? We're struggling with this in FNMC all the time. Like, please fill out this form so
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 that
that
we
the
know you
composer is
played
finding
the
out.
piece.
Yeah. Please reach out to the composer. This is so important for anyone who's listening and hasn't done this yet. Please reach out to the composer and let them know that you're playing their piece. And of course it leads to this lovely relationship most of the time. But anyway, for any one of us who reaches out to a composer and says, hey, I'm working on this piece, can I run stuff by you and make sure you're happy? There are X number of people who don't do that, and then just these performances floating around out there, performances on YouTube, performances at important festivals, or maybe even on recordings, depending on what the composer demands in terms of interaction before a commercial recording that don't really represent the piece well. And I guess you have to find a way to cope with that early on and live with that as a composer, that is,
Yeah.
because they have to relinquish control in order to do the thing that makes them feel successful, which is get a piece performed by a lot of different people all over the place. Well, every single one of those interpretations is out of your hands
But
to a large extent.
is that the mark of success, that your piece is out there so much that some of the performances aren't good?
Well, I hope not, but I mean, it's definitely a mark of success if so many people have played your piece that it's starting to become part of the repertoire, right?
And that they're not talking to you about it anymore. I guess
Recognized
that's what I
repertoire.
meant. Like it's left your
It's
hands
probably,
enough that you're no longer
yeah, it's
in
probably
regular
inevitable.
contact. Yeah.
Probably inevitable. And so, like my flutist brain, my performer brain thinks that this seems like it would be extremely frustrating. But here we are talking about, like you and I, like trying to needle these composers, like, no, give me more criticism. I want to get it right, and they're just like, it's great, thank you. And that's probably, I mean, that's a lovely trait, which I really appreciate. And it's probably a trait that they've had to develop, an attitude that they've had to develop in order to be able to stand being composers.
Or they're being really polite and it's actually trash.
God, I hope they have good therapists if that's the case, though, because they're having to live with that over and over again. Like, oh, fuck, another terrible performance of my piece, So I hope.
The singing on that recording was just not.
Does Renee Fleming know how to play the flute? Yeah, I don't know. I hope it's genuine when they say have fun with it and I'm happy afterwards. I hope they're not all just like drowning their sorrows in Jim Beam after every single performance they hear.
If people are drowning their sorrows in Jim Beam after listening to me be the singing flutist, I understand. But yes, I understand.
I would love to hear your version of Zoo Songs.
There's not a recording of that. I need to do it again, but our right to that score expired and I need to purchase it from her.
Oh, right.
So I would like to resurrect that piece. I think now that we've talked about it and I'm very thoroughly in a chicken phase, I would like to start performing that piece again.
Well, and but for the record, there are a lot of animals listed, and so that piece could be sort of like the umbrella piece. You've already got a little kind of chicken repertoire that you're building up, but there are pigs, there are horses.
There's a whale.
Oh, yeah, there's a whale. That's right.
There's a whale.
That's not. I guess that's in a zoo too. Sure. Yeah, I was thinking of a farm. Yeah, whales are in zoos. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, you could go in every direction. You could have like an album for each animal.
I mean, and there's very little stopping me. I think I would have happily recorded that piece, but Nino was very adamant that first rights went to the person it was written for, or else I think that could have been like my theme song. I don't know. I really liked these songs.
Well, it could be now.
It could be. I think I've moved on and I'm bound and determined to commission at least one piece, perhaps an album of pieces. I haven't decided, of pieces or a piece or pieces about hippopotami.
I knew it was coming. The lake bacon.
Yeah. So in my heart of hearts, I would like there to be an entire album of lake bacon.
I suspect you're going to be playing a lot of bass flute.
The composer friend with whom this joke became a thing originally, we talked about it and they did some sketches and then ultimately decided it wasn't the right time or place in their life. I've joked about it with a couple of different composers and I am still baconless.
Maybe this is how we should do categories of the composition competition with FNMC in the future. Just
animals like Elizabeth wants to write about.
Hippo category, giraffe category. I don't know. Like, I'm just making these up. We don't need chickens. You're doing a good job on your own there. But yeah, just like other animals we need more of. No birds. I mean, I love birds, but everybody does birds. Well, there would be a lot of submissions if there was a bird category, of course, because
there would be more submissions than there would be for a giraffe category.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. All right, birds.
Birds, done.
Maybe this is where our mental real estate is going that we can't practice later in the day.
Instagram? Oh no, my mental real estate later in the day is 100% going to Neapolitan courts. Students who are having crises that are new to them and therefore need help navigating what feel like otherwise
Yeah.
normal life situations in my middle-aged lady brain.
Yes.
And smiling and saying polite words, even though deep in my heart of hearts, I often want to run through the hallways just screaming, no! And so after being civilized and socially appropriate all day, I don't have time or the mental energy to like babysit myself through minute
Play
practice.
scales.
I didn't drop any F-bombs in a conversation earlier today, and that took 2% of my brain juice for the afternoon.
You haven't dropped any F-bombs in here, and I feel like I've dropped quite a few.
So ask me how much I'm going to practice after this conversation, though.
How much are you going to practice after this conversation?
None. Also, my flute's in Texas, so like it's not happening.
Oh,
I have the week off. Coming back on Wednesday. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe more of my concentration goes to being socially appropriate and, not saying a lot of the thoughts that flit through the mind.
I wonder if you need to be I wonder if you need to worry about that as much as you do. I mean, there's only one way to find out, and that's to
Do you
just
mean
have an
me
unfiltered Elizabeth
personally?
day.
Do you mean
Yeah,
me personally? Oh, I mean, grad school would suggest I do.
that's a long time ago, though.
Yeah. The hypothesis is always the person that you are when you have been drinking
Mm.
is the person that you are without social filters.
Oh, I don't like
Correct?
that. I don't like
I
that at
mean,
all.
but there's like a point at which I'm no longer laughing and leading Simon and Garfunkel sing-alongs, and I become perhaps verbally aggressive. I've been reflecting on this since the comment was made by my family at my sister's wedding that I'm not a very nice drunk. And I think actually I'm just not very nice, period. But when I'm sober, keeping it to myself. So, returning to the previous remark that like by the end of the day it's harder to practice because I've put a lot of energy into not running through the hallways just screaming ah, or you're dumb, I hate that, your shoes are ugly, your hair is bad, I don't like any of you. There's a lot of
I
mental
guess
energy.
the question you could never answer is how many other people are doing that in their heads? Like, is that just what it means to live in a society?
I hope that it's most of them, otherwise I'm a terrible person.
I think you're probably not a terrible person.
Then like we all had imposter syndrome at the beginning of the episode.
We're all screaming in our heads, your shoes are dumb.
But yeah, I think I could practice a lot more if it weren't like an Olympic sport to get to the end of the day without saying anything I regretted.
That's a quotable.
But I do endeavor to get to the end of the day without hurting anyone's feelings in a deliberate way.
That sounds like the goal of a not terrible person, by the way. I think the terrible people are the ones who don't give a shit.
I mean, that may be true. That may be true, but I meant like on a fundamental level, like it seems like it ought to be easier to walk through life without saying things to people that ruin their day.
I don't know.
And as an educator, it feels more important to like think through the thing that I am thinking and find nicer words for it than the ones that immediately volunteered themselves. Because you don't want to coach someone on something fluty and say something awful or that's going to land in a way that they're going to be talking about it with their friends 20 years from now, like sobbing. I don't want to be the reason somebody hates music or learning or themselves.
That's
Um,
nice. That's
so there's
good.
like a lot of weight into things you say, especially if you're in a one-on-one situation. There's a lot of weight to the things that come out of your mouth. And I, as someone who can sometimes be flippant and perhaps a little sarcastic, I gotta like filter so that I'm not scarring anybody when all I mean is like, yeah, that note really wasn't very in tune. You're still a cool person. I heard a really good saying from Don did a not a conducting, he did a band clinic. He was a conductor at a band clinic the other day, last week. And he came home and he was very excited about a quote from another clinician. They were actually talking about intonation. I was like, I'm talking about your intonation, guys, your intonation's not good. It doesn't mean I like you any less. I think you're all great people. I'm just reading you the news.
Cute.
And I thought that was a good phrase that I'm going to work into my pedagogical lexicon. Not about you, I'm just reading you the news.
Yeah, that's fancy. I kind of like, you're still cool though, or whatever. Hey, Elizabeth.
What
are 3 pieces of music you're listening to right now?
Like right now, I'm listening to the hum of the space heater under my desk because it's winter in South Dakota.
Like in the last week?
Oh, in the last week, 3 pieces that I've listened to. Oh, it's funny that you should ask.
Because we always ask that of everybody.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so one of them is excerpts from the Nutcracker, because that's coming up.
Yeah.
So that's more of a work thing. There are a couple licks in the Nutcracker. I was like, wait, which woodwind instrument am I with? I don't remember. Let's see. I've been listening to an album of the best of Billie Holiday.
Ooh, is that in preparation for your Cherise Lighter piece?
Partially in preparation for Cherise Lighter, and partially because as I was preparing the Cherise Lighter, I was like, I should know more Billie Holiday. I don't really know anything about most of her music, and she was a lady performer in a time when that was not a thing. So I feel like I want to know more about her. And what else have I been listening to? And I am having a 90s resurgence.
Nice.
So I have the Cake album Fashion Nugget.
Playing.
We
have that sitting in the dining room right now. Nice. So have we made an episode? I think we've made an episode.
I think we made an episode.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Music Crush. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also support the podcast, read show notes, and learn more about FNMC by visiting www.flutenewmusicconsortium.com. Support for this podcast comes in part from the Flute New Music Consortium. FNMC serves as a catalyst for collaborations between contemporary flutists and composers by commissioning new works, amplifying select recent works, organizing simultaneous premieres, and encouraging repeat performances of all FNMC-sponsored works. To learn more, visit www.flutenewmusicconsortium.com today.